The Pixel 9 Pro XL is just the best Pixel Google has ever released, and when it launched, we all heaped on praise for how nice it was to see a redesign from Google that just hit. But can you believe that the Pixel 9 Pro XL has already been out now for 6 months? But the question is, 6 months later, does this phone still hold up? Let me start with something that I've already mentioned in the intro, and one part of this phone that really does stack up is the design. And I said this when the phone was released all those months ago, but it seems that this generation of Pixel just matured and grew up, and then on the face of it entered the high end of Android phone design. While other Android phones stumbled into the same design year after year, Google took a chance with the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and for me, the Pixel 9 Pro XL now, even though we've seen other phones be released like the S25 Ultra, this still stands out to me as the best designed Android phone that you can pick up. The camera housing is different but familiar and still makes this undeniably a Pixel, and the whole design of this phone, I just love the way it looks. There isn't a second yet where I've looked at this and got bored of the design. Now, something that I wish that Google had not gone with is the shiny fingerprint heavy side rails, and don't get me wrong, I think they look okay, but I wish they had the matte design of the regular Pixel 9 because shiny means slippery and this is not the easiest to hold. But despite the Pixel 9 Pro maybe not being the easiest phone to keep tight in your hands, it's actually still held up really well in the past couple of months. I've not used a screen protector or case with this once, and besides a very small scratch on the side rails, they have still held up surprisingly well. And for that 6.8-inch AMOLED display, there isn't a single scratch on this, and it's been holding up much better than my Pixel 8 Pro did from last year. Now I'm talking about the display, I'm going to praise it, but first let me just get my 2 gripes out the way. First off, it's the bezels. Now I think the bezels are quite big on this. They are uniform across the entire phone, but I still think for a flagship phone, they're just a little bit too big for my liking, and sometimes they are a little bit noticeable. Then my second complaint is going to be that hole punch cutout, and again, this is not something that I notice all the time, but it is huge, and I know it had to be bigger to accommodate the bigger sensor for the selfie camera, but when you just take like 2 minutes to have a look at this, you can see it is absolutely massive, and when it does catch your eye, it really does catch your eye. Now I've got my 2 complaints about the display out the way, this still falls into one of my favorite displays on any phone that I've used in a while. Google gave us a brighter 3000 nit peak brightness display, and while living in the UK I don't always get to take advantage of that peak 3000 nits. When I have been out and about on sunny days, the display still stands out and is easy to see. And then when it comes to watching content on this display, it hits all the right notes to me. There is very little, if anything, to complain about. The colours are vibrant and accurate when you're watching any sort of content, and using that 120Hz throughout the phone is just a dream to use. And there is one part of this phone that I need to give Google credit for, because for me it is the biggest upgrade on the entire phone this year, and it is the ultrasonic fingerprint reader. It's snappy, responsive, and it doesn't miss, and the fact it's taken this long to get that on a Pixel is a bit criminal, but I am so happy that we finally have it, and I think this is probably the biggest upgrade from last year's generation that kind of goes under the radar because it's great. And also a quick mention for the haptics on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, because they are really good. They are so good that sometimes at night when I'm just typing on my phone, I have to turn them off because they wake up my partner because they're so good. And that's just something, again, that I think just goes under the radar, but haptics on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, they're fantastic. Now, let me talk about performance of the Pixel 9 Pro over the last 6 months, and there's no point in pretending here that the Tensor G4 is as powerful as the Snapdragon 8 Elite, because we just know it's not. However, Google have done a really good job of making you forget that the Tensor G4 inside of this phone is not as powerful as the Snapdragon chip, because it holds up really, really well. For example, day-to-day tasks, this for me stacks up with the likes of the S25 Ultra. It's as quick in opening and closing apps, and if you're planning on just doing social media scrolling, watching YouTube, or taking photos, then you're never really going to notice the difference between the 2 chipsets. And I haven't pushed this phone to its limits that often in the last 6 months, but everything that I have thrown at it, it is handled really well. When you first get a phone for review, in the first couple of weeks, you push it as hard as you can. So you do benchmarks, you're doing high intense gaming and other like video editing tasks. But when that time has died down, like it has now with the Pixel 9 Pro XL, the most I tend to push this is with some light gaming. And I don't really do that many intense tasks on the phone as you might think I would. So I feel like I can tell you that actually a couple of months later, the Pixel 9 Pro XL is more than okay. The only problem that I found is that if you're playing some mildly intense games on this, then it can heat up pretty quickly, and because of that and it being warm, it means that battery is going to be draining a little bit quicker. And talking of battery, I have noticed that battery on this is a little hit and miss. Now this is all dependent on how you use it, which I know sounds obvious, but with light usage I've always found myself getting to the end of the day easily with at least 20% left. But I have noticed that if I'm on a trip or I'm watching films or shows, then I start to worry about it, as I know it's probably not going to last the whole day. So for me, having a power bank is crucial when I go on these trips, and this is where CUKTECH have come in with the CUKTECH 15 Ultra. Now, this power bank I really like because it has a modern design. It can keep your devices powered all day and then some. It's packed with a 20,000 mAh battery that can charge the likes of your Galaxy S24 Ultra to over 60% in just 30 minutes. So for me, it makes it perfect for on-the-go charging. It has a 1.3-inch TFT display that can provide you with real-time data and alerts. And what's cool is that it can actually recognize phones from Apple, Samsung, and Xiaomi. It has 3 ports, so 2 USB-C and 1 USB-A, and the C1 port on this power bank supports up to 140 watts of output. If you need to charge this power bank quickly, it can also charge fully in 45 minutes by activating beast mode, and this can happen when you connect 2 chargers simultaneously up to 165 watts, so getting it charged fully takes no time at all. And this is also airline safe, so you can take it with you on your travels wherever you might go. If you like the sound of the CUKTECH 15 Ultra power bank and you fancy picking one up yourself, why not check the description below where you can find a link to grab one. My biggest complaint about the battery is probably the charging situation on the 9 Pro XL, because it's meant to charge at 37 watts, but then it doesn't really charge at 37 watts unless you're using the right charger, and then it's really difficult to find out which charger even gets it to 37 watts. Now, if you need recommendations on what chargers that actually work here, we've got a guide and I'll link that in the description, but even 37 watts is far too slow by most Android phone charging speeds at this point. So technically, yes, it is quick charging, but it's also quite slow quick charging. Pixels are just known for having some of the best cameras on any phones, and the Pixel 9 Pro XL, it's keeping this trend going because I really don't have much bad to say about the cameras on this phone. Now, they are pretty much the same as last year's Pixel 8 Pro, but when you get these out and about snapping pictures, you'll realize they feel and look just much better. Now, the photos you're seeing are a mixture from me and the AA team, so I can show you all the different scenarios that we've been using this phone in, and everything from the ultra wide to the main, and even going to that 10x zoom. The Pixel 9 Pro XL handles it all with ease. And one part that I picked out from the camera is that in almost all situations, it handles colors so well. Like, the reproduction here is fantastic. It's rare that the colours aren't matching what I saw with my eye, and it might be a bit of a cliche, but they are really true to life. For the most part, no matter what lens you pick, the details are excellent and dynamic range is mostly flawless, and as cameras go, it's no surprise, but the Pixel 9 Pro XL are still some of the best you can get on any phone. I found myself taking a lot of ultra-wide photos on this because, again, just like the main lens, the details you can get are great, and the exact same can be said for that 5x lens as well. I'd say 99% of the time, everything on that telephoto lens looks fantastic, and again, details are exactly what you want. If you told me I could only pick a phone based off cameras alone, then I'm probably 100% of the time going to go with the Pixel 9 Pro XL. We now have the additions of things like zoom enhance, which on paper sounds great, and it seems to work okay, but to me, it just kind of over sharpens the image more than adds any detail. Something I do want to touch on though is the video, because I have used it a lot on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and I think that Google have really stepped it up this year. I feel like video has gone from okay to pretty good pretty quickly. And again, if I only had to pick one phone based off video, then this might just be it. Something that Google has done really well this year is stabilization, and I feel like even last year it used to be a little bit jittery, and I'm not going to say it is perfect this year, but the stabilization now on the Pixel 9 Pro XL really has stepped up over what it has been on Pixels previously. Details on the ultra-wide and 5x lens are fantastic, and the main lens produces some great dynamic range and real-to-life colors. And the addition of being able to use Video Boost to upscale your videos to 8K is a favourite of mine. Even if you do need to select it every single time, and it does take a long time, the results are sometimes worth it. I'd say where the camera does struggle for video is in low light, and movement isn't as smooth as you'd want it to be, and the jitteriness that I said had disappeared in daylight does tend to return when you go into low light, which is a bit of a letdown. And if you want to switch lenses as you're filming, this isn't great either. But overall, the pictures and the videos that the Pixel 9 Pro takes, I'm a big fan of. There's a part of Pixel though which keeps drawing me in, and that for me is the software experience. I don't think there is much else out there that gives you the same flawless Android experience than a Pixel does. And I know it's not for everyone, but for me, it's simplistic and it doesn't add too much that you don't need, and it has a bunch of features that you can only get on a Pixel. For example, call screening. I know some people on the AA team cannot live without this, and for me, still the best feature you can get on any Pixel device is Now Playing. My only software complaint is really the Photos app, and I know a few people might disagree with this, but I think that Google Photos is a bit old now. It's a bit clunky and it needs a bit of a redesign, so I wish Google would just go away, spend some time working on this, and give us something that's a little bit more modern and easier to use, because for me, I'm just not a fan of this. It takes too long to find what you want, and it just needs a bit of an update. Let me talk to you about AI features, because it'd be silly not to tackle it, and some of the features I've used quite a bit, and some of them I've not touched at all. Things like Pixel Studio haven't been opened once, and Reimagine just hasn't been touched at all, because personally, I don't find them useful. They're just a bit of an AI gimmick. There are certain parts though of the AI that I now feel like I'd be completely lost without, and one of them is the Recorder app. And I know the app itself isn't AI, but everything within it is AI, and it is so useful. Now, I have found this a lifesaver when it comes to product briefings. There is so much info that it's kind of hard to keep track of, so being able to have that summarized and transcribed in real time is so helpful. And while that transcription isn't always perfect, about 90% of the time it does a really good job. And then using Magic Editor to remove people from photos is great, and I use this on almost every single trip that I go on. And hands down, Gemini Live is just the best part of AI on this phone. I've used this so much to work out my own budgeting, and you might call me a bit of a nerd, but recently I was walking around Singapore and I was having a conversation with Gemini Live about places to go and things to see, and it felt really natural, and that's what you need from AI. You need something that is natural and easy to use, and the Pixel 9 Pro XL just gives you that. And while I don't think the AI is baked into the Pixel phones as well as Galaxy AI is into Samsung devices, I've still been using the AI on this a lot more than I thought I would. So if you haven't figured it out already, I love the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and the last 6 months with it have been great. There is very little to complain about, but I still think that if you have a Pixel 8 Pro, it might not quite be worth it, and its $1,099 price tag is still a bit of a hard ask when you look at phones like the OnePlus 13, which is a few $100s cheaper and can give you a very similar experience. And I feel like it wouldn't be fair if I didn't call out Google for still starting the Pixel 9 Pro XL at 128 gigs of storage. It's not great. But I think Google surprised everyone with the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and this still holds up as well as you expect after 6 months. But this is more refinement over what was already great with previous Pixels, and the redesign put it into the premium category of phones. And it'll be interesting though to see what Google can do next year. And no matter how much I say it, the Tensor G4 does stack up day to day with the likes of the Snapdragon 8 Elite, but I know that for most people, the Tensor G4 is just a bit too much of a letdown to tempt you into paying a flagship price for a sub-flagship chip. But let me know your thoughts on the Pixel 9 Pro XL if you've been using one for the past couple of months, because I'm curious to what your experience is like, if it differs from mine. Oh, and I also forgot that this still has the temperature sensor. Like, let me know how many of you remembered that this still has a temperature sensor. Before you head off, why not subscribe to the Android Authority YouTube channel? And if you do that, then I will see you in the next video.